So this is the current climate. So this is what we live in at the minute. So writing coursework as an international student can be a challenge. Well, it's a challenge for everybody, but for an international student, you've got added things. There is much complex academic vocabulary to deal with and confusing words to translate. So there may be words to translate which you may not have known in your number one language, in your L1 language, specific terminologies. And then you see the word plagiarism everywhere and how it is so important to avoid it. And yet the word plagiarism is banded around, and yet nobody has explained exactly what plagiarism is. So this is what we're going to do here. Another challenging aspect for international students can be the conveyance of complex thoughts and ideas that are usually required in an academic essay. So you have to work quite hard with conveying different attitudes, conveying problems, conveying arguments, you know, your own take on things, and that can be quite a challenge to do in another language. And often it's hard to know how best to integrate the sources. So the secondary sources are those sources you'll be using in your assignments to support and to back up what the point you're trying to put across. So in your courseworks and in your assignments, you'll be discussing different ideas and analysis, some your own, but others taken from readings and articles. So some will be your own work, your own ideas, and your own ideas will be supported by others taken from readings. So essentially, plagiarism means taking words or ideas from a source without giving due credit to the author. So when you take somebody else's ideas, you need to credit the author, that person that's written the source. Because in academic work, the ideas and words are the private property of those who wrote them. And ultimately, at the bottom there, that's the last thing I kind of put in at the end there, after I thought about it. Be proud of demonstrating your own work. Be proud of it. I know that in some countries and some cultures, the work, the sources of others are revered to be the only one there, which is great. But then the work that you're producing, you're actually producing your own work and you're using somebody else's sources. And from those sources, which may be differing, you make your own interpretation of it. So your interpretation.
Hi Mel. How does one reference previous reports that you've done for the coursework?
Okay, I'll coming on to that bit in the next slide. That's all right. People always want to go ahead because we've got 19 slides here, but yes. So these are different forms, and I'm sorry, I have to call it plagiarism because the other words, it's too long. So these are the different types of plagiarism. So the first one there is failing to paraphrase properly. So it's the direct copying of someone else's work without attribution, without the use of quotation marks. This includes swapping synonyms while maintaining the same structure. So basically, even though you think you may have put something else into your own words, if you just change a couple of words, but while maintaining the same structure, then you're still deemed to be copying directly. So, and we'll go into the next slide. So it's a case of learning to paraphrase properly. Now, Paul, I think this was self-plagiarism, resubmission of the same work. So that is something that you can't do. So, for example, you can't resubmit bits of coursework you did last year. You can't resubmit stuff. You can't resubmit stuff that you did maybe at school. Okay, Paul?
I'm thinking more about there may be sections or paragraphs, not the whole report, but there might be paragraphs that are useful to re-provide. Can you do that by referencing yourself of the previous report?
No, unfortunately not. This reprovision thing, I like that. I like that word, reprovide. It's like offering it again. Unfortunately not. Your own work. So if it helps you, look on yourself as an author, but you can't self-reference. So you need to be able to put it again. You need to paraphrase your own work.
Oh joy. Okay, thank you.
Yes, okay. So you've got self-plagiarism, and that's also called, Philip, can I reference work from, say, my undergraduate thesis? No. No, you need to be, because it's done it yourself. You could, the only way to go about doing that would be able to use the work from the sources that you would have used in your undergraduate, in your dissertation. Yeah. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So self-plagiarism, although it's so you're working on the same format, you're working along the same lines, the same topic, but yes, you need to be careful to put it in your own words and paraphrase it again. Collusion, working together on the same piece of work. This means that colluding with your mates, with your friends, to produce the same piece of work. That's something to get round. Contract writing, which you know, buying a pre-written assignment from an essay writing service, which I think they've been zoned out just now. And this is the last one. An incomplete understanding of the source material. If you don't understand it, don't try to use it. So it's very tempting sometimes to have an article and you think it contains some of the key words that you want to use. However, upon reading the article, you might find you don't really understand it, particularly if it's a language, you know, particularly obviously if it's not in your mother tongue, then some of you might not get the full gist. If you've got any doubt at all, don't use it, or find a simpler one. And then there's another question I'm quite often asked is, you know, what is the difference? When do you have to cite something? And what is the difference between common knowledge and including something from a source? So is this a question for anybody? Has anybody else wondered this? What is common knowledge? What should I reference? Has anybody else come across this? Yeah. Because it can be quite difficult, but this is the kind of the basic rule of thumb. You may have heard you don't have to reference common knowledge. However, what is considered common knowledge? Because what may be common knowledge to one person may not be common knowledge to another. Information that most people know. Now, I was going to say that water boils at 100 degrees centigrade, but then I think if you're at the top of Mount Everest, I think it boils at slightly lower, if somebody wants to correct me on that. So things that are common knowledge, things that we've all learnt from school. Is that right, Paul? Yeah. You don't have to reference. Generally observable facts. Most people use mobile phones. Facts that and you know, things like excessive sugar can contribute towards diabetes too. Okay, things that are commonly observable facts, you don't have to reference. Information that is known, not known by a common group, such as names and national events. So, for example, history events you would have learnt at school, or events that will be common to people within your field. So, within the field of science, within the field of engineering, there may be common events or common names of things which are relevant to your own field. In that case, you don't have to reference it. And there it says again there, knowledge shared within a common field. So the way to get around this is to always ask yourself who your audience is and what do you assume that the audience knows. Sorry, the text has come off there. And what do you assume the audience knows? So when you write something, you have to think about whoever's going to be reading it, and will they understand what you're saying, or do you have to, or will you have to you know, either to spell it out or to use a citation for it. So how to integrate sources. So these are the ways that you'll be using to integrate those sources. So sources are those external factors, those external pieces of information you get from online, from the library, etc., etc. The first one's paraphrasing. Summarizing. Summarizing is the same kind of thing as paraphrasing. It's just to paraphrase something just means you can use a shorter sentence. So you can like paraphrase a sentence or a paragraph. Summarizing is summarizing the whole text. and correct referencing. So you're expected to show that you've read the relevant sources on a subject, and that's your citations. So you're expected to insert citations when you've read somebody else's work, and then you put it in your own work, and that's where it stops. However, but you need to explain these ideas in your own words and arrive at your own conclusions. So when you're incorporating somebody else's sources, you're not just plugging them in there to pad the assignment or to pad the coursework out. You're putting them in there to make a difference to what you've written. And from inserting these other sources, you will be able to arrive at your conclusions, because you're using these sources, and then you can say, from that, this shows that, or this demonstrates that. Don't just copy. In your writing, describe other people's ideas or results, usually references and their importance to your argument, rather than simply copying what you read. So what I mean by that is you don't have to simply copy and paste quotations, because quotations on their own don't mean anything. The quotations should be supporting what you've said, and then adding importance to your argument, if indeed it is an argument. So, okay, so how do you all paraphrase something? So Paul, can you tell me how you paraphrase? Because I think we've touched on this briefly before.
Basically, I read the section and I highlight the key points or the key words that I want to get across, and then reformat it in my approach to language, so that it reads the way the rest of the report is written.
Yeah, good. Yeah. So that it can be, I mean, people, that's basically it. So people have got different ways, but one of the things not to do is to say you have a 2-page article, is to read it and then highlight and underline absolutely everything, and then try and change each sentence and try and change, because that just takes far too long. So it's to gain, first of all, an overall understanding. So paraphrasing involves 3 changes: the words that you use, for example, the nouns, the adjectives, the verbs, the structure and syntax, so the structure of it, so your clauses can go the other way around, or whether it's active or passive. And the elements of the original text, you pick only the applicable text, so you're not taking out all the text, and it allows you to present other people's ideas in your own words and require a citation. So essentially, like you said there, Paul, you're getting the words there, you're representing that, and you're acknowledging the author. So you're acknowledging the author with the date of the publication. So this demonstrates you understand the main points and can link with your own ideas. So read your article. In fact, I'll just go on to the next. Yeah, I have said it. You read your article, you reread it, you absorb it, you set it aside and write from memory. Now, that's not to say that you rewrite the whole article, but like you said there, you make down the key points, and then you reformulate those key points into your own interpretation of it, because the writing is your writing. So then I've said it there. So you read the passage several times to understand the full meaning. So then in a reading strategies workshop 2 weeks ago, I said you get the text and you can just skim through it, pick out the main points, read it very quickly just to get an overall meaning of it, put it, write it from original passage, some of the same words. Do you have a question there? Will be paraphrase text with the original passage and make minor adjustments to phrases that remain too familiar. Okay, I hope you can still hear me. So once you've written your paraphrase, go back. Oh goodness me, it's okay. Is it okay now? Good. Okay. You want to go back and check that the words you have used don't bear too much in correlation with the original words in the text. So try not to patchwork. So when I say patchwork, I mean patchworking is just basically grabbing little bits of an original piece of text. Like you might want to take a topic sentence and then another sentence there, and then you stitch them together. Oh, okay. I'm sorry that something my slide disappeared. Is everybody okay? Yeah, okay. Okay, good. I don't know why I'm just give me 2 seconds. Well, it should be, yeah, okay. I'll speak a bit louder, I think. Okay, good. So try not to, okay, good. Try not to patchwork. So when I say patchwork, when you look at an article there, aha, okay, that's true. I'll maybe put that off. So is that a bit better?
Much better.
Okay, I hope that's a little bit. Okay, good. Oh, it doesn't like my face then. Okay, right. I'll put it on at the end. So try not to patchwork. So patchwork essentially means taking bits and pieces out of the article you've already read. So you could be taking a phrase from here, you might be copying a sentence from there and then patching all together. And I'm sure we've all done that at some time or other, and then hoping it all comes together. Try not to substitute synonyms for some of the author's original words, as it does not display the author's argument. So particularly for international speakers or to international students, we've all learnt to use the dictionary and we've all been told to always use synonyms and go to the thesaurus. But often when you just got a sentence in, you look for a synonym, it does not actually always put across the same meaning. So it doesn't display the author's argument. So you're best off reading the whole article, the whole piece of text, and then formulating your own version of it. So throughout the whole article, you've got your own version. An acceptable paraphrase must alter the structure of the author's writing. So essentially, you're getting hold of the person's work. You're not using synonyms. You're not patchworking. You are putting the whole thing into your own voice. And just take your time and read it a couple of times. So this is a little task I'm going to give you. So if you've all got your either pens or paper, or you might want to open another screen. And I want you to spend a couple of minutes seeing how you get on with this one. So practice paraphrasing this paragraph. So like drought, excess rainfall and flooding can also contribute to epidemics of waterborne infectious disease, in this case due to poor sanitation resulting from runoff from overwhelmed sewage lines or the contamination of water by livestock. So the thing to do is to look at that paragraph and don't start paraphrasing it straight away, but look at it. Understanding of it, look away, what it means, look back again, what does this mean, any of the key words or whatever. Go back to it. As a little practice. Okay, so I'm going to time you for 2 minutes. Okay, that was probably a short 2 minutes. So how did you find that as a sentence to paraphrase? Did it take a bit of understanding? Do you want to put it in the chat? Okay, you all still working on it? Okay, yes, some words are not unfamiliar with. Aha. This is where this is important that you said that, because this is, yeah, a bit difficult trying to find words on my own, but different from the author. Yes, I know what you mean, Sharon, because sometimes there are words that, for example, waterborne infectious diseases can be a little bit difficult to find synonyms for. So then Nelson's saying some words you're unfamiliar with. That is what it can, yeah, livestock. Yeah, in the water, livestock meaning animals, usually cows. Which is actually, so livestock is primarily an agricultural term. So in this instance, sometimes if you're unfamiliar with words, so in this instance, sometimes if we're just finding synonyms isn't always the best solution. So now, if we go into the next slide, okay, Philip, poor sanitation as a result of excess rainfall and flooding, which results in choking of. Okay, result in choking of drains can lead to waterborne diseases. Poor hygiene and contamination due to run off from stressed sewage line can lead to an outbreak of contagious disease, drought, flooding. Okay, good. Good. It's things like infectious diseases. Now, when they're common words, they are difficult to paraphrase. So good. Look there and you'll see acceptable higher than normal rainfall can impact existing sewage systems and cause sanitation issues with existing watercourses. So it's good to read it and then have your own, because everybody, despite the fact that it's, you know, you're using a lot of other secondary authors' work, you're creating your own voice in it. Good. Excess rainfall and flooding at drought can contribute to epidemics of waterborne infectious illnesses, in this case due to poor sanitation caused by overburdened sewage. Yeah. Okay, so if you look here, you can see okay, good. I came up with excess rainfall flooding. And in this case, poor drainage management can result in a widespread of waterborne infectious diseases. Yeah, and you know what? Once you've started paraphrasing, you'll actually get into rhythm of doing it, you know, of doing it continually. So you can see there you've got your acceptable paraphrase. So the second one there, they've changed the sentence structure. The sentence structure is always a good way. So sometimes you look at the end of it and then you see if you can turn it around. And then acceptable paraphrase. The first one is they use the synonyms there. So yeah, so sometimes, so an issue which often happens with international students is diving for the dictionary, particularly the Google dictionary, which and then you try and patchwork it together. And although it takes a little bit more work to begin with, try not to automatically go for synonyms when you're paraphrasing. It's fine to look up the dictionary when you're reading it, and then from that you can formulate your own, you know, your own version of it. So to reference correctly, so it's necessary academic practice to show which of the sources you have used in your work and acknowledge the authors. So you use in-text citations, the correct reference systems, so it'd be Harvard or Vancouver or APA or any others, the correct use of quotations, and the correct layout of references. So plagiarism, for want of a better word, plagiarism can be deemed to be an incorrect usage of all these things. So even if you have inserted a reference within the text, an in-text citation, and it's incorrect, you haven't quite managed to do it right because you haven't known what to do, that's also deemed as plagiarism. So it's really important at the outset that you get it all right. Okay, so these are the common errors: using words without quotations, or incorrect citation, or multiple referencing systems. So you might use Harvard in one paragraph and you might use Vancouver in another one, or APA in the third one. So you need to keep it consistent. And I'll give you an example here. So Smith, 2009, argues that the popularity of the sports utility vehicle is irrational, as despite the high cost, most are never driven off-road. In this view, they are bad for road safety and the environment and road congestion. Smith, 2009, 37. So tell me what the 37 is. Tell me what the 37 refers to. Good, it's the page. So when you're referencing a quote, yes, good. When you're referencing a quote, you use the page number where it's appropriate. So you might have an online chapter of a book or an article, an online article which has the page number. And in this instance, you reference the page number. That's for a quote. Okay. If there's no page number, so it might be a government publication. There's obviously no page number, so you don't need to reference it. You don't need to put the page number. But always, I'm sure you know, always put the family name of the author and the date of publication. And there you see the reference at the end. Smith, M. 2009, Pound Estate, Basingstoke, Palgrave, Macmillan. But to learn how to reference properly, that's another workshop, and there's PowerPoints on it. This is just an indication of the things that can go wrong with it. So in order to not plagiarize, is, as it said in the previous slide, use in-text citations properly, use quotations properly. You must quote the authors with the family name and the date of publication. You must use quotation marks around the author's exact words. So within the words, within the sentence there, it must be the exact words. So if you put the inverted commas, the exact words in them, and the author and the date of publication, that's absolutely fine. So what you're doing is you're providing the correct authorship, the correct authoring of your sources. And you must include the page number, the original source if applicable. So here's an example of a direct quote with a brief citation in Harvard style. So Wenger, 1998, page 181, argues that, semicolon. There's the quote. Okay. I've also discussed this before. The argues that, which you'll see there after the author, is a reporting verb, and you can use different kinds of reporting verbs to demonstrate your understanding of the article. Just to make matters more confusing, there are actually a few ways to reference your work. The main referencing styles are American Psychological Association, not relevant for you. Modern Language Association, also not relevant. Oxford, Harvard, and Chicago referencing. So it'll primarily be Harvard that you're using. So academics have created these different styles to best suit the subject, so it's important to find out which format your work requires and consult your lecturer if you're unsure. Okay, so just moving on to the next bit. So it's an understanding of what you need to reference. Any quotes you include in your essay, any paraphrasing of ideas you have read, any mention of another thinker, or anything that are not your original thoughts. And as we said at the beginning, anything which is not deemed to be common knowledge. So all those things must be referenced. However, how do you quote directly parts of what an author said using quotation marks? Okay. If I go back there, So if you see it there, Philip, you'll say, you could say something like, in fact, I might take a little bit, yeah, that's a direct quote. So you could say, Smith 2009 argues that they are bad for road safety, the environment, and road congestion. Does that make sense? So basically you're saying, so for example, I'll use my surname, Gray, 2022, pointed out. Okay, that's different. That's different, Philip. But when the author said a lot of things, but you only need a portion of what they said. Okay. If an author said, I think I see what you mean. If an author has said lots of things, it's, you kind of go back to that example there. If an author said lots of things, you can paraphrase. You can paraphrase his paragraph or his sentence, and then at the end, yes, you can, yes, but you're citing two different things. For example, Sharon, you've there that first bit there, Smith 2009 argues that, and then that's the paraphrase in his view. But I think they're just using that as an example. Okay, they're using that as an example because that one, they are bad for road safety, the environment, and road congestion, they've taken from page 37. Yeah, so that's just used as an example. So you could say, you can double it up. You can do it twice. You could say, they pointed out, the first part is paraphrase. Yes, exactly. The first part is paraphrased and the second is cited literally. Using the quote. You can have both. And then it's Gray 2022. Example in thing Gray pointed out. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, good. Okay. She said, no, you would have to keep saying Gray or whoever the author is, unless it was quickly followed by a further thing. So you can only really say she said if it was directly followed the name, because it wouldn't be, but you wouldn't have the author and the paraphrase and then she said. No, so you would say it again. You just have to have the paraphrase there with the Smith 2009 or Gray 2022, and then again with the citation. But one over it, or to have a look, is to look at some articles and see how they do it, and then you kind of get into a rhythm, and then over time you'll get into your own rhythm. Okay, here we go. You must quote the author's name and date of publication. You must use quotation marks around the exact words, and we've done that. You must include the page number, the original source if applicable. So we did that slide. Consult your lecturer if you're unsure. These things need to be referenced. Quotes should be included in your essay. Paraphrase, we've done this, of ideas you've read, a mention of another thinker, and or anything that are not your original thoughts. So this, actually, I'll see if I can make this a little bit bigger. And then the question always remains, how do I know what's not my idea and what's not my idea? Okay. So if you find yourself in this position, the best thing to do is to ask yourself, could anyone else know this? Are you putting two and two together in a way that any person logically could? Or are you making a groundbreaking claim that could revolutionize the field? The chances are Often, when you're using enough sources, the middle bit, are you putting two and two together in a way that a person logically could? If you're using that, if you're sizing other people's and putting together your own conclusion, that's absolutely fine. That's proof of the fact that you're using somebody else's work and you're integrating the other sources to provide your own evidence. This demonstrates that. This shows that. If it's the former, you're good to go. It's unlikely that no person ever has ever said what you're writing, and as long as you're confident you drew the logical conclusion yourself, you should be fine. And I think that's what I said in one of my first slides. I said, be proud of the work that you're producing, because although you are using other authors' work, they're using their work as supporting your work. So you're making your own interpretation of what they said, which is absolutely fine. And that work wouldn't have been used before. Yeah, however, it's the latter. It's essential to make sure your idea hasn't already been proposed. For example, I'm trying to use an example here. For example, if you said that too much time is spent on mobile technology can cause overactivity in children or something. A few people have come up with this, probably quite a few. So you'd have to be very careful if coming up with work that's already been proposed, conclusions which have already been drawn. So you would have a different slant on it. After a lot of studying, it can be easy for all your readings to blur into one, but a simple Control F search through online journals will allow you to sift through potential articles, see if somebody's already written your argument. So if you do Control F on a text you're reading through, you put in a key term and you'll see how many times that term comes up, which is really good method when you're looking for sources, when you're looking for articles along what you're due to write or what you're interested in or the point you're trying to prove. Finally, be organised. After hours of reading, note-taking and analysing, it can be hard to remember what your arguments and what came from text. So as you're going along, make a note of significant page numbers, authors, work title, and years of publication. And it's crucial you accurately reference where quotes come from. So how many of you use RefWorks, the GCU RefWorks? Yeah, good. RefWorks is a good habit to get into if that's what you're using, because when you starting to use it, RefWorks is really good. It's like everything. Doing your coursework is a good habit to get into, organising coursework properly. So having a look at your assignment title, your coursework title, understanding the topic, the limitation, the instruction being asking you to do on your word, deciding the layout, deciding exactly what you're looking for. When you're thinking about what you're going to be looking for. I used install my references, and it allows me to get reference formats for the papers too. Yes, that's a good one. So the good thing about RefWorks is it's just like a library. Yeah, it's a library of storing your references, and then from that, and it means you don't forget everything, because it's really easy when you're reading multiple articles to lose one, and then you think, where did I put that, and then you forget where you've got it. Whereby RefWorks is a great way of making sure you've stored it all properly. Then it means, so whatever your citation is within your text, your lecturer must be able to look back and track everything down. So working under pressure, so anticipate pressure, especially at midterm and right before the end of the semester when coursework can pile up. So is your work piling up at the minute? Or are you sorted? Okay, fairly. Okay, are you working on one piece of coursework or multiple courseworks? Oh, great. Are the 6, did they all come in at once? Okay, multiple. Oh, okay. Yes, so you'll be working under pressure. And do you work on them all at the same time, or are you working on them one after the other? A couple, yeah. Yeah. So as long as you've got your file structure sorted out, and careful not to dance between them too often, because then you'll kind of lose, you can lose time swapping from one to the other, unless they're okay based on one after the other based on deadlines. Yeah, so working under pressure can be difficult, and then when you work under pressure, particularly if English isn't your mother tongue, it's very tempting to want to just think, oh, I'll just stick that in and nobody will notice. But, unfortunately, when it goes through Turnitin and things like that are noticed. So it's worth trying to get into a good practice at the very beginning. Ask for help from your lecturer. Make an appointment with your academic advisor if it comes to that. Seek academic support from the subject specialist librarian, I'll put the links up afterwards, and from the LDC, and manage your time effectively. If it's possible.